Welcome everyone to Emerging Meeting Tech for Collaboration Continuity. My name is Eric Tooley. I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager with Logitech Video Collaboration, and I am joined here with my special guest, Sean Simmons, who's the Head of Alliances for Alexa for Business. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. We've got a Q&A panel. We encourage you to submit questions that we can get to in our conversation, and we'll set aside some time at the end to answer them because there's been some news this week. Everything is always changing and there's a lot of new stuff going on, and we are here to help you lead this webinar with new answers, new information that you didn't have before. If you check out the resource list panel, you can find some additional information on the topics we're covering today. And of course, if there are any technical issues, just check out the help module at the bottom of the screen or reach out in the Q&A and the moderator might be able to help you too. So with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's discussion. This is an exciting topic because we're all talking about how to collaborate in a world where nothing is predictable. And we have seen a huge and very abrupt shift from most people working in the office most of the time to a lot of us working remotely most of the time. And it's really hard to predict the future. Is 2021 going to be more like last year, or is it going to be more like this year? And to that end, we're here to help you make some informed decisions about how you should be investing your resources, your plans, and your priorities, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we can at least try to be flexible to accommodate it. So just as a lot of us are using video conferencing a lot more often, both for social and for business, there's new development happening in the voice command world. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have Sean with us today, because we're talking about voice commands not just on our smartphones and our smart speakers, but also in meeting rooms. So Sean, talk to us about Alexa for Business. What is it that you guys are trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, thanks, Eric, for that intro. So just to kind of start and talk about my group and Alexa for Business and what we do, when we started, and even today, voice UI in general, we see widespread adoption, right, in people's personal lives. And so, the latest stat I saw is 1 out of every 3 adults in the US has access to a smart speaker in their home, right? And it's only taken 5 years to get to that level of adoption. And so when we look at that growth, we see a few drivers. One is it makes people's lives easier, right? And what I mean by that is you take something like playing music with your phone before, you had to take your phone out of your pocket, unlock it, enter the PIN, find the music app, launch it, do a search for the song or the playlist, versus today, you say, Alexa, play music, right? And so it's a very small example, but as you start to take on more and more tasks with your smart assistant, it adds up to taking friction out of people's lives, right? And then when we looked at the other big driver, it was the UI, and it was voice, right? Which is comfortable, people understand it, they've been using it most of their lives. And so really where Alexa for Business started is we are trying to extend that optimized workflows and simplicity and comfort with technology into people's work lives like they've experienced it in their personal lives.
Well, speaking of work lives and personal lives, I can guess that you're in your home office.
I am indeed, yes.
Yeah, me too. Let's put up that first poll. Because I'm curious as to whether or not you're working from home, you're at the office, you're somewhere else. Are you on vacation? Are you in a cafe drinking coffee with a mask on? I'm not sure how that would work, but go ahead and those of you in the audience, answer the poll. We're happy to share the responses. I'm going to answer it myself. I am clearly working from home, bracketed by plants, and against a back wall so you can't see the rest of the house because I'm sitting in the dining room, right? We're all making this work. All right, do we have poll results to share? All right, I'm looking at poll results. More than 80% of us are working from home, but we do have 1 in 5 or so are working from the office.
It's more than I would have
I'm wearing a shirt with buttons, but I am wearing shorts. It's being July in California. This is the normal at the moment for a lot of people, is that we have this blend, this hybrid of, sometimes we're in a shared workplace, sometimes we're in our homes. I'm surrounded by devices that respond to voice commands. And so this is something that I think everyone on the webinar wants to know. If we've got, voice controls in the workplace, how is that, how is that different than having, say, Alexa on my kitchen setting an egg timer or something? What's the point here?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so, when we decided we wanted to take Alexa into the workplace, we started talking to customers and end users, right? And Alexa for Business has been out for a couple of years now. And really what's driven the roadmap is talking to people about, again, what are some workflows we can optimize and what are some problems we can solve? And so, a good example is something like scheduling a meeting room, right? Whereas if, you've got an upcoming meeting and you figure out you need a conference room and you didn't book it, you can say, Alexa, find me a room. And she'll go ahead and ask you how long you want it for. She'll find you a free room and she'll book it on your behalf, right? And so when you think about the alternative there, you no longer have to open up your laptop, open up Outlook, go to the calendar, find the time slot, look at all the rooms that are available on your floor. And so it's another example of taking something that's, 15 to 20 steps and you're reducing it to a simple voice utterance, right? And so another example, a reoccurring theme that kept coming up when we were talking to like IT and facility stakeholders was the concept of meeting room efficiency. And, the reoccurring problem that kept coming up was, hey, users are complaining there's never conference rooms available to book, but then when I walk the floor, there's empty conference rooms. And so what you can do with Alexa for Business now is when people don't show up to use those rooms, Alexa can actually free them up so other people can book them. There's a configurable amount of time if they don't show up within 5 minutes. And if the meeting organizer has that room booked for a reoccurring series, Alexa sends them a note that basically suggests, hey, if you no longer need this room, maybe go ahead and take it off the series. And so on an ongoing basis, you can start to see more and more of those rooms be recovered for people who actually need them.
Now, we had some news hit the wire yesterday with Logitech and Amazon, where we now have Alexa for Business support for Zoom rooms with Logitech Tap and Tap room configurations with our Meetup and Rally conference cams. So it's not as if we have to put like an Echo Dot in meeting rooms, or we have to use like our Alexa smartphone app for this, is it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So, typically Alexa for Business has been out for a couple of years now, and how you had to deploy it in the past was you would go and put an Echo Dot in the conference room. You can register it and manage it through the Alexa for Business console. It can integrate with the Zoom room or whatever, conference room equipment you have in there. It can integrate with your Office 365 or Google Room Calendar for booking functionality that I was just talking about. And that's how Alexa for Business has been deployed. And, it's been good, and we've been developing more features based on end user feedback. But some of the feedback we got from our IT folks is, can you make it easier, right? Can you make it easier to activate Alexa in these conference rooms without having to go out and deploy more hardware, right? The other theme that I'm sure you guys hear all the time is, companies are trying to simplify their conference rooms. They're trying to get less hardware in there. And so for us trying to introduce a new piece, there was a little bit of going against the grain there. And so what we've worked on with Logitech and Zoom is basically a software version of Alexa for Business that is now just embedded and installed on the Logitech Zoom Room. So now with a few clicks, it's just you can go ahead and enable it from a software perspective. And then, the Logitech camera microphone is the microphone you use to interact with Alexa. And then the actual tap touchscreen displays the Alexa buttons, like the Alexa mute button or the wake button, if you want to go ahead and activate her that way. And so it's all built in to really enable IT stakeholders to be able to roll this out more widely and move quickly.
All right, for those who don't know, Logitech Tap is the touch controller that we make for room solutions, for rooms like Zoom rooms or Teams rooms or Google Meet rooms. And it shows the calendar and it gives you in-meeting controls. And so now when we have this new application that you install on the PC running Zoom Room software, now that adds the Alexa controls when Alexa is active. Is that right, John?
That's right, yeah. I've got,
and so
I've actually got one here. I don't know if you can see it, but we've got the little Alexa buttons there on my touchscreen.
Hey, I don't even have a tap in my home office. I'm kind of jealous. I
think after the launch, they're going to,
right?
Yeah, I think after the launch, they're going to take it back from me. So we'll see.
Yeah. So anybody who's got a Zoom room that's powered by Windows, right? Not by Mac. Is that right?
That's correct.
But anybody who's got a Zoom room and their conference camera is a Meetup or Rally, because those are certified as microphones and speakers for Alexa. They got to have everything they need to add Alexa for Business to the rooms and add some voice controls. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. So the Rally and the Meetup camera, they went to our acoustic labs and went through certification to make sure that it's a high quality and highly resilient and highly accurate experience. And then with the tap touchscreen, so we can enable the Alexa for Business visual buttons. And then the Zoom Room TV screen will actually give you visual indicators when you're working with Alexa too. So when you engage Alexa and wake her with the wake word, you'll see the blue bar at the top of the Zoom Room TV screen, and you'll hear an audible tone notifying you that Alexa's engaged.
Okay. So you always know when Alexa is awake?
Yeah.
There's a visual indication of that?
Yeah, that's important because a lot of people want to know, hey, when am I engaged? When is Alexa, capturing voice and sending it to the cloud? And we always give those visual cues. And so that's part of the certification process we have to make sure those are in place so people understand when Alexa is active versus when Alexa is not active.
Okay. We've got a question in the Q&A, and I encourage you all to keep putting in those questions. We got some good ones queued up. For meeting calendars and integration, does Alexa know if about who I am and my meetings, or is it just meetings that are booked in that particular conference room where the conference room is the resource?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for this particular solution that we're talking about, Alexa for Business is integrated with the room calendar. And so when you walk in and you say, Alexa, join my meeting, it knows the next meeting that's scheduled on that calendar for that room. And so it's not your personal calendar. And that's basically, our in-office solution. There are options to integrate Alexa with your personal calendar if you want. And you can do things like, ask for your work briefing and she'll read out all the meetings you have scheduled for that day. And you can ask her to change meetings around if you have conflicts. But for this particular in-office solution, it's only integrated with the room calendar.
Okay. Hey, let's do another poll because we're talking about some stuff that seems like it's new and very present, but we're also looking forward to the future. So let's put up the poll for a prediction time. Like, what will our workplace be like in 2021? Is it going to be, more like last year, more like this year, or is there any way to know? You'll see the poll on your screen. I'm going to go ahead and submit my answer. Sean, did you submit it too? I want to know.
Let me go ahead and submit mine here too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Because part of what what I'm really interested in is there's a soft side to IT that we've never really had to care so much about. That's really important now, because before, those of us in tech, our job was, we need to provide the tools that people need to get their work done. But now we also have to accommodate how they feel about getting their work done, and their comfort levels, and their sense of, is my company and is my IT organization, looking out for my health, and not just my productivity. So we've got answers for the poll. People think, well, it looks like the 4 out of 5 dentists agree that next year is going to be more change, and not kind of back to the old, the way we got used to doing things in 2019. And so this is part of it. And those of us in tech, we've got to roll with that. So how can voice controls in the workplace, contribute to this kind of expanded responsibility and scope for IT?
Yeah, no, it's good points and a really good question. When leading up to the March timeframe, we saw voice growing, and we were onboarding more customers, but it was mainly around the simplification and enhancing end user productivity. And then March hit, right, for us in the US, and that kind of flipped the world upside down for all of us. And in-office solutions like the one we're talking about, rollout stopped, usage dropped, and it was really just about shifting to enable work from home, right? Which we saw, some companies were in a good position to do that. I had already worked from home probably 2 to 3 days a week, and so it was more of a minor shift for me, but some companies really had to scramble and make sure they were, like you're talking about, make sure they're reacting and giving employees what they need to be able to be productive, to work remotely. And so now a lot of the conversation with very little notice, right? It was one day, it was operating as normal. The next day it was not. And so it was a big challenge and a heavy lift. And so what we're seeing now in like conversations that my group is having with customers is more about what does that reverse path look like, right? And I don't think any of us really know for sure what's going to happen, like the poll indicates. I think in some ways it's still too soon to really know. But there's a lot of trying to understand, end user needs, and safety is number one, and like you mentioned, making sure people are comfortable, right, and making sure that they're productive. And so a lot of our conversations with IT teams and facility teams right now is they're trying to figure out a way to do that with these evolving requirements, because I think everyone acknowledges it's not going to look like it did. But there is going to be a portion of users that come into the office, and there's going to be a portion of users that stay home. And so our conversations have mostly been, specifically been about voice UI and how that can help in shared conference rooms. For users who don't want to touch shared devices, they don't have to, right? They have an option to join a meeting and not use the touch screen or, adjust the thermostat without having to touch it. And so, most of our conversations have been around, how IT teams can prepare to support that with the ultimate goal of making their employees more comfortable.
Right, and this doesn't have to be expensive. It's not like we're talking about putting in, high-tech room monitoring and a whole extra system for this kind of stuff. With Alexa, of course, we're thinking a lot about voice control, but with Logitech devices, we have a whole computer vision benefit here. And let's put up the computer vision poll. There are a lot of ways that Logitech cameras use their smarts to ensure a better meeting experience. And I'm curious as to what people appreciate about that today and what they hope computer vision can do going forward. And of course, we want the benefits without it being at all kind of creepy or invading our privacy. And that's something that we think about both from being heard and from being seen in the office. I know that you mentioned tap before. working with Alexa for Business, you get the control buttons. How does Alexa for Business use the motion sensor in Tap?
Yeah. So when we're talking about using voice UI in the conference room, there's a couple ways to engage. One can be user initiated. Alexa, join my meeting. Alexa, extend my room booking by 30 minutes. One can be more schedule and time driven, where it's hints and reminders. So at the end of the meeting, 5 minutes left, Alexa can say, hey, you've got 5 minutes left based on that calendar entry. But the cool thing about working with Logitech and with Zoom is we're trying to also get a smarter signal without users having to actually do anything, right? The user doesn't have to initiate anything on their side. And so the first step in that is using that motion sensor that's built in, or the occupancy sensor that's built in the Tap, to know whether or not people are in the conference room. And so if you remember the feature I was talking about that we call intelligent room release, where, if people don't show up for a meeting, Alexa for Business can release that room and then notify the meeting owner that they released the room. And so we're actually using the sensor on the Logitech Tap as a signal for that. And so when we detect people are in the room, we hold on to that room booking, and even if it's a face-to-face meeting, the user doesn't have to give us any other signal. They don't have to do an Alexa utterance. They don't have to join a video meeting or anything like that. And so it's really helped sort of round out that use case and make a smarter feature for Alexa for Business by pairing with that with the Logitech Tap occupancy sensor.
Great. I think that's a great example of how the latent capability of meeting room technology can be expressed and applied in new ways to enable some new capability. So we're putting up that poll now about computer vision in the meeting room. And this does kind of circle back to another question we got from the audience about privacy, right? Because it's one thing for the tech in the room to know that someone is there, and it's quite a different thing to know exactly who is there, what they're talking about, who they're talking to. That opens up a whole new set of questions, right? So from Alexa's point of view, is Alexa identifying the people in the room? Do we recognize, maybe based on like iBeacon from their phone, who's entered the room, or is this something that's more abstract than that, or more private than that?
Yeah, so it's more private than that. And so essentially we're working with the Logitech Tap that signals motion or not motion, right? So there's no identifiers for who the individual is or anything like that. The question that comes up a lot with our group around privacy is, is Alexa always sending my voice to the cloud, and are you guys storing it, right? And part of being enterprise grade to bring Alexa into the workplace was making sure that we had that security and privacy foundation. And so we've done a lot of work to make sure that the right controls are in place. And so we've got that big security paper that our IT stakeholders go through and see all the ins and the outs of the solution. But really, a lot of our conversations are around, that type of question from end users and making sure that they're comfortable with it. And the answer to that question is no, right? It's not constantly capturing your voice and sending it to the cloud. It goes back to understanding how the system works. And so again, Alexa is waiting for the wake word. And until that wake word is mentioned and Alexa wakes up, we're not sending voice to the cloud. Once the wake word is used and Alexa wakes up, we have a connection to the cloud so that we send the voice, and you can have that dialogue and give the command that you want Alexa to execute. And you always know when that is happening because of the blue bar that sits at the top of the screen and the tone. And so that will remain on the screen while Alexa is engaged. And so the first part is really making sure end users understand how the service works, understand that, no one in their company, no one in IT, no admins can actually access any voice recordings. And then the other part is understanding the controls that IT has, and a lot of them implement, which is For those, that voice that is sent to the cloud, you can purge it, right? As there's IT controls to be able to delete that and make sure that on a regular basis you're purging that and that it's not being held on to.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Hey, let's push the poll results about computer vision, because it's a good kind of visual counterpoint to this. More than half of us, really appreciate that computer vision can adjust, where the camera is directed and pan, tilt, and zoom so that we crop out the dead space, crop out the plants on either side, and just focus on the people who are in the room. But there are other important benefits that IT is beginning to realize that they can get from computer vision, like identifying over or underused rooms so they can better plan for space. Do people need more small rooms, or we have a 30-person room with 4 people in it 90% of the time? Maybe it's time to break that room up. Or do we have a policy where in our meeting rooms we've taken out half the chairs just to try to relieve the risk of having too many people in one space? And can we use computer vision to help measure that, so that we know that we're being successful in establishing these best practices? So these are things that are already part of the products that and the technology that are deployed in Zoom rooms today. As long as you've got a Logitech powered system, and then you can add Alexa to it. So this is all pretty exciting, kind of future focused stuff for this to help us be better prepared for whatever 2021 is going to be like in the workplace. Because all we really can do is plan to be flexible. I, of course, am curious about your plans for Alexa for Business. I mean, these are some nice features. Start a meeting, release a meeting release a room if nobody shows up. What are some of the other wish list items that you think people are hoping for when it comes to voice control in the workplace? Yeah, so
we get a lot of different feature requests, and it's a range, right? And so previous to everything that's going on in the world today, it was about it could be about in meeting features that they'd like to see with automatic action items and transcription based things. A lot of times it's with pervasive tools like Outlook and how we can help minimize steps and workflows there. And sometimes it's more role specific, right? Like, hey, can I, it takes me too long to run a report in QuickBooks, right? Or it takes way too long for me to submit a timesheet. And so it's kind of a wide range. What we're seeing now is the new requirements where it's a lot about hands-free. So help me do more hands-free items that I typically would need to use a touch screen for. And now I want to be able just to use voice. And so, we've started with meeting controls like join and end meeting, and we're starting to get a lot of feedback on how we can build onto that and do more functionality in working with the Logitech Zoom rooms. And then the other, topic that comes up quite a bit is making, more along the lines of making rooms smarter. So I think that occupancy sensor is a good example of the first step, but we want to do more intelligent things where we can anticipate what users need instead of them having to think about it and to initiate it. And so as we think about, where we can go with this partnership with Logitech and Zoom, that's where a lot of the focus is right now. And it's mainly driven from our end users and our customers.
Great. Well, we've covered a lot of ground and not a whole lot of time today. We're coming at about half past the hour. We are here for your questions, so please keep them coming in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to them either live or in a follow-up material that we can send to you after this. There are other resources that you can access. There's a bunch of news. Even if you just Google Logitech Alexa, you'll find some editorial coverage that's come out over the past 24 hours. And of course, we've got our Alexa for Business page on Logitech.com for our room solution, so that'll come up too. There's a video that you can watch that kind of demonstrates how this would look and how this would work. So if you're in IT, it's one thing to kind of like understand how the tech works, but being able to demonstrate to your employees, how is this technology going to make their lives easier, and how is it going to make their meeting rooms more comfortable for them? There's some assets in there that are friendly and user facing that can help everyone get more comfortable with what we're all doing to try to make a better workplace for everybody going forward. So, Sean, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to leave us with? Your vision of what a really well-equipped meeting room, what kind of user experience and IT management experience is going to be like next year, or even today.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've been noticing in the past conversations in these couple of weeks is there's really this, and we saw it before, but now more so than ever, there's this sense of this employee obsession that IT and facility teams have, where they're really focused on their end users. And whether it's through surveys or interviews, there's this really strong sense that they're trying to understand the needs and keeping a regular pulse on it as time goes along, because it is fluid, right? And things are changing and needs are changing as we're trying to plan this out. So to me, it's a matter of keeping that tight feedback loop with users, understanding what those needs that are coming up are, and leveraging technology, whether it's voice UI, whether it's computer vision, like you were talking about, to try and meet and solve those needs. And that's what we look forward to the most, is understanding and working with our customers to make sure that we're evolving to help meet those.
Great. Hey, we have a great new question that's come up in the Q&A. How can IT encourage adoption of new tools? And what are some of the main obstacles to adoption? How are they best approached? And I've got a point of view on this. And then, Sean, I want to hear from you too. In our experience at Logitech Video Collaboration, we have found that all of the quick reference cards and training and troubleshooting tips in the world, they can only do so much. There's only so much that IT can actually do to change people's behavior or to make them operate the equipment in the right way. So what we have found is to increase adoption, make the room operate and adapt to the people who are in it. For instance, deploy a system like Rally, for example, our high-end conference cam for medium and larger rooms. It automatically adapts to side light and glare and backlighting, so that if people leave the blinds up and the sun is streaming in, it balances out the glare and leaves people looking with kind of natural color in their faces. Or right side technologies that will use computer vision to move the camera around, so you're not expecting people or telling people, hey, if you're the only person in the room, please zoom in on yourself, because otherwise you're this tiny little head at the end of the table, and no one can see what you really think, because they can't see your expression. And so the easier and simpler and more natural you can make your facility, or you make the tools, then the more likely it is that people are just going to walk into a room. We're always a little bit late for meetings. We don't want to have to do anything besides focus on the topic of what we're trying to accomplish, focusing on the collaboration as opposed to on the collaboration tool. And Sean, I think that introducing technology like voice control that a lot of us are pretty used to on our phones with our smart speakers is a step in that direction too. Yeah, no, I think with voice UI, in addition to that, right, you need to make sure that you're meeting an end user need and that it's simple and it's easy. I think voice UI has some advantages with adoption for two reasons. One is it's familiar, right? There's people who are using it in their home lives, and so they understand the technology, they understand how to work with it.
But two is, specifically about the solution that we're talking about, it's deployed in the conference room, and the conference room or the meeting room, by nature is a social place where you'll typically have more than one person in a meeting room. Right. And so an advantage for voice UI is you get a pretty good networking effect in terms of users learning about it, right? If, I'm in the meeting room and I saw, the Alexa enabled sticker on the door, digital signage. Oh, that's cool, but I don't know how to use it. And then I see Eric come in and he says, Alexa, join my meeting, or, Alexa, extend this meeting by 30 minutes, or who has this room booked. And then, I learn that. And then when I go into the next meeting room, I use it. And so it's, we've seen a lot of success through adoption and just users learning from each other and sort of that networking effect. And it's an advantage to be deployed in conference rooms to actually facilitate that.
Yeah, that's a great point. We live in the world of influencer marketing anyway. And, we are influenced by our peers. We're certainly influenced by our managers and anybody in a position of leadership or authority. So, if you are in IT, your strongest allies in making sure that all of your colleagues get the most benefit from your investments in tech is that you have a couple of champions who are going to model this for their colleagues and for their direct reports, so that just like you said, Sean, if I walk into a room and people are already there and I start saying things like Alexa, start my meeting, or let's find a bigger room, then learning has happened. And if you break the ice, if you set an example, if you're sitting at home, everyone else is on audio only, and you're the one who turns on their webcam, and suddenly they see that it's not such a scary thing to have your camera on, and in fact, it can be a benefit because if you're trying to make a point and everyone already gets it, and they're like, yeah, go on, then you don't need to belabor it. You're saving everybody time by showing them your feedback, even if you can't see anybody else. And it just takes that first person to take that first step. And when the benefit is clear, it'll catch on. And on that note, clear benefits that catch on. Sean, thank you so much for spending half an hour with everybody today. This is an exciting development. We're thrilled to be able to deliver voice controls in Zoom rooms with our Logitech tap rooms and Meetup and Rally. This is going to be, when we're back in the office, I'm going to be that person who uses Alexa command to use this, because I want everyone to be able to benefit from this. There's no magic bullet to getting comfortable in a group setting in the current environment. There's a lot of little things that we can do. And one of them is washing your hands. And another one is, if you don't have to touch something that everyone else touches, and you can use your voice instead, use your voice. So with that, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody on the back end for moderating and keeping the chat going. If you've got more questions, put them in the chat while you still can, and we'll get back to you in writing. And please come on to Logitech.com, and of course, you can learn everything you want to know about Zoom Rooms and Alexa for Business. So, awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.